40 years ago, in the heart of downtown Calgary, members of the Baptist Church crossed paths with someone experiencing homelessness.
Moved by compassion, they felt called to serve, and they gave him a hot meal and a warm place to stay. From that moment of humble beginnings, the mustard seed took root.
Since then, we have helped thousands of people, made positive changes in their life as we have expanded our programs and services to 7 cities across Western Canada. Over the years, we have worked alongside countless individuals, providing shelter, housing, food, clothing, wealth and wellness support, employment assistance, and more. We met our community where they are at and work to provide resources to improve their life.
The mustard seed is more than a shelter. It's a place of resilience. It's hope grown.
I'm Drew Anweiler, Director of Quantitative Measurement and Strategy at the Mustard Seed, and one of the voices behind Hope Grown. In this episode, we continue our journey into the often overlooked crisis of rural homelessness, a quieter struggle shaped by limited access to services, geographic isolation, and the weight of stigma. Though different from urban homelessness, the challenges are just as urgent. Together, we'll listen to stories from the ground and the lives they reflect. This is part 2 of our rural series, where we conclude by highlighting the 3 most recent communities we've been called to serve: Medicine Hat, Grand Prairie, and Saskatoon. Let's first zoom out and look at what the broader data tells us about who's most affected and why. Despite being often viewed as a city problem, homelessness is occurring at greater rates than in some of Canada's largest cities, according to a study from 2022 published in the International Journal on Homelessness. The shortage of affordable housing is felt more in places where housing is already harder to come by. Furthermore, access to support and resources is also limited. There simply aren't as many around as in a city. Homelessness interventions tend to be targeted at urban communities, as rural homelessness tends to be better hidden. According to the Homeless Hub, investment in social housing in northern parts of Canada has declined in the past decade. This compounds the challenges of creating affordable housing when building in the area comes with higher construction, operating, and repair costs. Lack of infrastructure to reduce the worst outcomes of homelessness, a higher degree of poverty creating increased pressure, and the life-threatening cold of winter are all factors that make navigating homelessness in rural Canada complex. The lack of support and services may also mean that people are forced to leave their communities and move to urban centers to find resources, adding further pressure and strain on urban agencies. Indigenous migration is another factor to consider, as people move into rural centers from reservations to access services and opportunities or to flee violence or abuse. In some communities, there's an overrepresentation of Indigenous people experiencing homelessness. The effects of natural disasters also need to be considered, as disaster homelessness has been on the rise. This is homelessness resulting from loss of residence due to a natural disaster such as a wildfire or flood. Evacuations from affected communities can cause additional strain on the resources social organizations have, and while emergency reliefs can help, they can also be short-sighted, leaving folks with nowhere to go long-term. In short, rural communities face the same challenges in addressing homelessness as urban centers. However, they must do so with less resources and support available to them. This reality is especially evident in communities like Medicine Hat, where rapid growth has intersected with limited infrastructure and rising housing needs. Nestled in the South Saskatchewan River Valley, Medicine Hat is home to over 65,000 residents, with a steady annual growth rate of 2.56%, according to the Alberta Treasury Board and Finance in 2024. As the city is growing, so are the complexities of housing insecurity. The journey of the Mustard Seed in Medicine Hat has been one marked by resilience, flexibility, and an unwavering commitment to those we serve. In 2019, we were called to Medicine Hat. This time, it was a collective of local organizations, the Champion Center, Hope Street Ministries, and River Valley Community Church's Oasis Cafe that reached out. All of these organizations had long served the community faithfully. Rather than continue separately, they merged into the Mustard Seed Medicine Hat and began offering wraparound services like wellness support, advocacy, laundry, meals, and housing navigation. Over the years, we've grown alongside the community, learning how to better meet people where they are, both physically and emotionally. That journey took a pivotal turn on February 28, 2025, when we officially closed our location at 503A Allowance Avenue Southeast. While the Medicine Hat Emergency Shelter remains operational, we made a conscious decision not to relocate services there to preserve its capacity and purpose. Although our physical location was closed, our mission did not change. Instead, it evolved. With incredible community support, we pivoted, embracing mobile, community-embedded approaches that allow us to remain present and impactful. On April 15th, we launched Seed Impact, our outreach program. Beginning with a breakfast outreach program, this marks a new chapter in our efforts to care for the community of Medicine Hat and meet them where they're at. Since then, we've distributed over 260 bagged breakfasts, not only nourishing those in need, but also easing pressure on other service providers. By addressing hunger head-on, we're also reducing the risk of food-driven crime. This outreach is powered by volunteers whose compassion continues to be the heartbeat of our work. Health and wellness services have also transformed. Though our Community Impact Center once served as our hub, it now functions as a daily launchpad, a reliable base from which our dedicated staff deliver support across the city. With help from our partners, we've embedded services directly into the community. Mail and tax support are offered at the library and other locations, like the Mustard Seed Shelter and senior residences. Advocacy takes place everywhere from courtrooms to coffee shops. Counseling has transitioned to virtual and phone-based delivery, significantly reducing no-shows, with plans to resume in-person sessions through a new partner site. ID and foot care clinics continue on an as-needed basis, ensuring critical needs aren't missed. Our clothing and crisis items program has likewise become mobile, reaching individuals who might otherwise fall through the cracks. From April 15th to 30th alone, we supported 114 people and handed out over 500 pairs of socks. With our SafeLink partnership, clothing and hygiene kits are now being delivered across the city. We've launched a trial outreach warehouse, partnered with DYL Fashions to distribute clothing vouchers, and continued weekly clothing support for the shelter. We're currently exploring vehicle options to make this work even more accessible, especially for those hard to reach. Throughout this transition, community feedback has been both humbling and affirming. Other service providers have expressed gratitude for the breakfast program, recognizing the relief it's brought. Medicine Hat police have reported a dramatic drop in incidents at Allowance Avenue, a reflection of the stabilizing impact of our mobile approach. While challenges have shifted across the city, our focused, compassionate presence has made a real difference. With your continued support, we can keep showing up wherever it's needed most. To offer a closer look into this evolving chapter, we turn to Danny, a dedicated team member who joined the Mustard Seed in 2024 and has quickly become a vital part of our mission. Here she is now, in conversation with our production team.
Kind of what brought me to the Mustard Seed is I ended up leaving a previous job working at a Christian kids camp and moved into the town of Medicine Hat, had a couple tragic stories kind of play out in my life and ended up finding myself without a job, and kind of similar to where the guests are at, to be honest. I remember I was just volunteering everywhere because, I still had enough money to pay my rent and things like that. And so I just was volunteering, just looking for different opportunities and ways to help. And that's kind of the personality that I have is very much helper focused. And just seeing a need, fill a need. That's kind of my motto, I guess. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Robots, but see a need, fill a need. And that's kind of where I'm at mentally with that. So when I see a need, I just try to fill it. And so when I was volunteering with a youth group here in town, one of the pastors just came up and he's like, "Hey, are you still looking for a job?" And I was, and he's like, "I think that this job would be a really good fit." And he passed me along the details of the job description that I have right now. And 2 weeks later, I was having an interview and hired on. So it's really cool, but I really aligned with the mission and the vision of what they do because they are seeing a need and they are filling a need. And so that really aligned with where my values were in seeing a need and filling a need. And I was just like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this even existed, right? And So I've been very, very grateful to start and just help seeing the needs and filling the needs of Medicine Hat. I would say the need in Medicine Hat, it's hard to say. I know that there is a lack of housing. I think as our population increases, there's going to be more needs. As the cost of living increases, there is more needs as well, right? But I would definitely say that housing is a huge need in Medicine Hat specifically. But as for the people of Medicine Hat, each person is so unique and so individual of where their needs are, what they're looking for, whether it be a rehab clinic or whether it would be just getting a meal, whether it would be finding low-income housing or even finding friends or somewhere that has diapers or anything like that, where their needs are. It's such a broad scope. And when you have an increase of population, you will need an increase of services. It's just, it comes with the territory, right? Most of the time, it's such a complex issue that people end up unhoused or out living rough, that it's so many facets of life that kind of get to them. It could be trauma. It could be they're new to Canada. It could be that they don't speak English well. It could be that they had an abusive parent, like they grow up in a low-income family, or they suffer with addictions. There's so many different reasons and factors that someone could end up being homeless and out on the streets, or just end up, needing a little bit of help. So yeah, it's bridging that gap, and it's explaining to people, hey, like, we don't say homeless person, we say a person experiencing homelessness, right? So educating people of how to still treat people with dignity, even though they're suffering through a problem. It's the education piece that I love doing and bringing to the schools and the children and showing them, like, hey, they're just people. And they had a really rough go most of the times. There's a lot of trauma stemmed up in a lot of the people that we see, and educating the kids, the parents, and anyone that wants to listen of where someone could end up, because in a moment of time, you can end up in a paralyzing accident where you lose your source of income, where you lose your housing, where you lose the income to get food. Within 2 months of having a stable life, you could go to a very unstable life and not knowing where your next meal is going to come from.
Hearing from Danny paints a vivid picture of the shifting landscape in Medicine Hat, where population strains, limited infrastructure, and housing insecurity is evolving beyond shelter alone, now rooted in challenges of access, affordability, and sustainability. This is further highlighted by the 2023 Alberta Provincial Estimation Report, which states the top 3 reasons for housing insecurity across rural Alberta were low wages, the inability to afford rent or mortgage payments, and increasing rent costs. Rural areas are susceptible to the same pressures in housing stock as urban centers, with usually lower stock to begin with. The report in 2023 found that women are 1.4 times more likely than their male counterparts to be housing insecure, with roughly 1,348 women reporting housing insecurity. 97% of respondents who spent time in care are housing insecure, and 89% of respondents who served time in the RCMP, Canadian Armed Forces, and emergency services are housing insecure. You might be wondering, where are all these people? They are often hidden. In rural communities, experiencing homelessness comes with its own unique challenges. Deanne Bernard, the Executive Director of the Alberta Rural Development Network, has previously spoken about this uniqueness when discussing how homelessness manifests in rural settings. Bernard says homelessness in rural communities is often less visible than in cities such as Calgary and Edmonton, where those experiencing homelessness can often be seen sleeping rough or in tent cities. Sleeping rough is much harder to do in a rural community because it wouldn't be acceptable in the community, and if you lived in the community, you wouldn't really want people to see you, so it's a hidden crisis. It's people living in their cars, living out in bushes in a tent in an abandoned building. She also highlights that stigma plays an even greater role in smaller communities. In rural towns where everyone knows everyone, individuals facing homelessness often feel a heightened sense of shame and fear of judgment. The pressure to remain unseen, to keep their circumstances hidden is compounded by the lack of privacy and limited local resources. As a result, people are more likely to isolate, go without help, or delay seeking services out of fear of social repercussions. As we continue to explore the need in rural communities, we now turn to Grand Prairie, a city we were called to serve in early 2024, located in the heart of northwestern Alberta's Peace region. With a population of 69,377 and a growth rate of 3.12%, according to the Alberta Treasury Board and Finance in 2024, Grand Prairie is experiencing rapid expansion. As the largest city north of Edmonton and in Treaty 8 territory, its growth brings both opportunities and challenges. We expanded into Grand Prairie with the opening of Cedar Point, a permanent supportive housing building designed to offer more than a place to stay. With on-site healthcare, food support, Indigenous and multicultural spaces, and recreational areas, Cedar Point has become a hub for healing and belonging. To give us a closer look at how the Mustard Seed is responding to the rising needs in this community, we turn to Kendra, who has been with the organization since 2024. A vital part of the team at Cedar Point, Kendra has played a pivotal role in helping serve the residents of Grand Prairie. Let's now hear from her in conversation with a member of our production team.
A lot of our young people don't have the life experience to understand why someone might find themselves without housing. We do in our community have people that live rough. They live on the streets or they sleep outside of local shelters if there's not room for them inside. And I think it intimidates our young people because they're just not sure what to think about it. So I'm able to express to them that, some people may have come out of different programs or they may have been incarcerated for a time or ill. And it really makes the kids think, wow, yeah, if I was sick for a while in the hospital and then left the hospital, I probably could have lost my home. And so they really think about that a lot. We talk about some of the causes of poverty, being new to the community, growing up in poverty, maybe single parent families, moving a lot, being transient. Grand Prairie has a very large transient population. It's a young population, a lot of younger families. And so sometimes they find themselves in a place without family supports or social supports. So when times get hard, they're just not always able to know where to go for help. So I think even broaching these topics with our young people might even help them go, oh, yeah, I understand. Maybe I've seen so-and-so in my class, and maybe they haven't had a lunch. They don't bring lunch all the time, or they look like they could use some new clothes. Maybe they haven't gotten an updated jacket or backpack this year. Helping them sort of understand that not everyone has the funds to purchase items in a timely manner, but talking about it in a safer environment, say like a presentation or someone like myself coming into the school, kind of takes the pressure off of, maybe the teacher or other people and present it in a neutral fashion. And I really love to talk about person-first language, that we're significant as people because we're created with dignity and value. And our circumstance might look different, but we still have value because of who we are. So we're significant despite of our circumstance, because our circumstance could change from any moment, any day, any month, and really encouraging them to see the value in other human beings. Homelessness is definitely increasing in Grand Prairie. The statistics were released from last year, which counted 387 individuals in our point in time report. And yet I don't think that that's entirely accurate, because a lot of folks will be probably like myself, be couch surfing somewhere. So there's going to be people that aren't counted in that type of a study. Interesting thing about Grand Prairie is, as I said, we're a fairly young population. I think our average age is about 32. We have 70,000 people living in the city, but we serve a large region, a very large geographic region of 350,000 people. So while we're the size of Red Deer, could you imagine about as many people as Edmonton coming to Grand Prairie for services? So it's really quite staggering when you think that we don't have as much infrastructure. We just don't have buildings or shelters or businesses or places to really help you. Like we have one Costco and one Walmart. We don't have an IKEA. So people come here for work because the work is very good. There's a lot of oil and gas work. There's some forestry. There's a lot of farmers around here. So we have some great pioneer families. But a lot of these young folks come here because they always hear there's work in Grand Prairie. Then they'll come and they might have some babies because they're younger. But then again, haven't had family supports or a social net around them because they haven't come with their whole family and they haven't maybe made a lot of friends here yet. So we have seen some more substances in our community. We have had some more drugs enter our society. It's been more readily available. I think the substances that are coming in are highly addictive. So our young folks don't always know the effects that it's going to have on them when they try something new. They could get perhaps a really poor reaction to it. And again, just needing some helps in our society. So yeah, we've seen this transient nature. We've seen people new to our community or new to Canada kind of trying to figure out where they could get supports also. So they'd be having a need of some family supports or maybe being low income as well. So lots of different factors are going to be impacting why we are seeing homelessness and poverty on the increase.
In what ways do you think homelessness in Grand Prairie would differ from the larger urban center?
We have one shelter, and so there's just going to be a maximum number of beds. There's an overnight mat program. There's a daytime drop-in center. But if we think that we might have 400 or 500 people that are definitely considered to be homeless, but we likely have hundreds, if not thousands, of other people really lacking permanent homes, permanent shelter. And if you have one shelter, so the shelter has a wait list. It's just the shelter is always full. The daytime drop-in center is always full. I was talking to a gentleman from another agency recently, because I've been getting a lot of calls just even on my work phone saying, someone told me that this is the mustard seed and I need to call here because I need help. And a lot of them are calling from surrounding towns and other little communities in our area because this is a very northern town, but there's still other communities farther north of us. So they'll call Grand Prairie. It seems like a larger center. And they'll say, I can't live here. I'm getting evicted and I need to come work. And I come there. So I mentioned this to my colleague and he said, tell them not to come. We don't have room in Grand Prairie. Like I don't have a second or third or fourth shelter to send them to, right? Like Grand Prairie has, as I said, often just one of something, if we're fortunate to even have that. So the services that are being provided perhaps were intended to serve a population of 20,000 or 30,000, and now they're serving a population of possibly 100 or 200 or 300,000 people. And so we simply haven't kept up with the amount of resources necessary. There's great nonprofits here, there's great agencies, wonderful supportive businesses, but it's been quite a pressure on our region with the amount of supports that we're seeing that are being needed currently. As I said, we just don't always have another place to send someone, which is really hard, really sad.
Welcome to Shelter Take. I'm Pia Church and I work as a development coordinator here at the Mustard Seed, and I'm one of the many voices behind Hope Grown. At the Mustard Seed, we know that people facing homelessness and poverty are, first and foremost, people, full of heart, humor, and hope. They've got stories to tell, dreams to chase, and moments that matter, just like all of us. So we asked a few of our guests in our men's recovery program in Kamloops one simple question. What's a challenge you've overcome that made you stronger? Here's what they shared.
My short-term memory, because I struggle with it and it's a challenge, so I put more effort into it and to try and remember people's names and things I have to do and small things even, that I think my short-term memory is actually improving.
Overcoming my addictions to drugs and cancer and trying to make the best of my life right now. Try to stay clean and make sure that I have a prosperous life.
I'd say the challenge that made me stronger was patience. Patience to tolerate people and stressful situations and that kind of thing.
I think the biggest challenge is the challenge of empathy and humility for me, because since I have chosen to take the help and come to the Mustard Seed and be a member of the men's recovery program, I have learnt a lot about empathy and humility, seeing all the people still out struggling all around here and around me, and realizing that if I didn't choose to take this help and support, that I could have easily been one decision away from being out where there's other people.
Well, I really love nonprofit work. I really appreciate Christian organizations that want to serve people just because Christ compels us to serve. So I've done a fair bit of nonprofit work. And when I saw that the Mustard Seed was here in Grand Prairie, that was a great surprise to me. And I started researching a little bit and seeing the decades of really good work with homelessness and poverty. And I thought, wow, that's really pretty inspiring. I remember thinking that I'd grown up in probably what a lot of us would have considered somewhat average circumstances, but there was a lot of dysfunction in my home. But we did move around a lot. And later in my life, even within the last few years, I moved out of Grand Prairie for a short time to live with my brother and his family back in the lower mainland of BC for a couple of years, which is a really great time to be there with him. And then coming back on sort of short notice back to BC at the end of 2023, I actually found myself technically homeless because I had to come back quickly and I had not had time to find myself a place to live. Then I discovered when you move provinces, there's a lot of different things like ID and permanent address requirements. So I found myself without a home. I wasn't working. I didn't have ID. I didn't have a doctor. I couldn't really access services. And I remember saying to Byron and Dave in one of our interviews, I said, I consider myself probably a fairly average person. I had a lot of great opportunities in my life and great careers and jobs and places to live. But I actually found myself homeless and with no income. And I thought it was a very eye-opening experience. While I wouldn't have called myself a well-off person before, it gave me new appreciation for the struggles that we can encounter through maybe even no idea that that was going to impact us. We weren't really traveling on a road that we thought that we would encounter that sort of a journey. It kind of just came to be. I hadn't done anything wrong. Not that that's the only reason that we could find ourselves there, but it really struck me as we're really all people first. And this is a circumstance that we might find ourselves in. So I thought it's really interesting for me to see that the Mustard Seed is now in Grand Prairie, wanting to reach people in their community, wanting to impact homelessness and poverty. And for the first time in my life, I really could see the other side of a coin. I could really understand and have more compassion and more empathy and think, man, it just can affect so many of us. And we just have to take a moment and help those around us. And so I've been a recipient of friends helping me. And I want to continue to be the type of person that reaches folks in our community with hope and compassion. It says, whatever circumstance you might find yourself in, we want to see that you get some help. We want to be here to give you hope, give you an idea of a healthy future. And I think that's super inspiring when we can have that perspective.
Sometimes it's the smallest moments, a warm bed, a kind word, a shared meal, that remind us how far kindness and hope can go. The growing reality in Saskatoon underscores just how vital these moments have become. According to the 2024 point-in-time count, 1,499 individuals in this city are currently experiencing homelessness. This snapshot reflects the complexity of the homelessness crisis, as it includes individuals and families in emergency shelters, transitional housing, encampments, institutional systems, and those navigating hidden homelessness. In response, The government of Saskatchewan introduced a provincial approach to homelessness in October of 2023, which included the funding of 60 new emergency shelter spaces in Saskatoon. One of those critical spaces is the Mustard Seed Saskatoon Shelter, a 24/7 facility that provides up to 40 beds, hot meals, showers, and wraparound support services. With a housing first model, the shelter is not only a place of refuge, but also a launchpad for long-term stability. The shelter is only part of the solution. The Mustard Seed Housing Saskatoon, located at 304 2nd Avenue South, offers a more permanent path forward. This supportive housing facility provides 60 stable, affordable homes for individuals exiting chronic homelessness. Residents sign a lease, pay rent, and receive 24/7 access to integrated services, from healthcare and addiction support to cultural programming and community recreation. Through this model, the Mustard Seed and its partners, including Saskatchewan Housing Corporation and Saskatoon Housing Authority, aim to reduce homelessness at its roots, helping residents sustain their housing and rebuild their lives. Supportive housing not only fosters personal recovery and community connection, but it also eases pressure on public systems, reducing reliance on emergency services and hospitals. To help us better understand the work happening on the ground in Saskatoon, we now turn to Anne-Marie, Senior Director of Affordable Housing and Property Management, who shares insight into the operations and impact of the Mustard Seed's housing initiatives.
Could you explain a little bit what the different types of housings are? What is affordable housing? What is family housing? What is supportive housing?
So family housing is geared to families, and so those are 2 to 3 bedroom units. So we do have families living in that space with limited supports. With affordable housing, we have affordable housing in 3 of our cities. And affordable housing, there too, we do not provide any supports and supports meaning programming. Like we have no programming, we don't have staff on site. We don't do the same level of check-ins with the residents. It would just be kind of considered what we would call low market housing.
What cities would those be in? You said they were in 3 different ones.
We have family housing in Calgary, and then we have affordable housing. We have affordable housing in Edmonton, Grand Prairie, and Calgary, and soon Red Deer. We will have one small project in Red Deer that is launching. We have supportive housing in Calgary, Edmonton, Grand Prairie, and now Saskatoon.
Can you explain a little bit what supportive housing is and what it's like in Saskatoon specifically?
So supportive housing, we have 24/7 staff, and that staffing model can vary depending on the type of residents that we have living in the building. It also means that with supportive housing, we have certain deliverables that we want to achieve. And so those deliverables can be things like strong emphasis on programming, which is everything from social programming to, say, medical supports on site. And our staff are also continually engaging in light advocacy work for our residents. So whether that's they've lost their ID and they need to get ID, our staff will help facilitate that, to helping them get on income supports if they don't come with income supports already. And then they would continue to help them navigate like different systems that they may need throughout their tenancy with us. As of October of 2024, there was approximately 1,500 people who have been experiencing houselessness or homelessness. And that number has tripled since their last point in time count. I don't know when the last point in time count was, though. Some of the increase in numbers is because the city is being more robust in how they are tracking people, and whether it's in the prison systems that they're going into to find out the status of folks, or walking through and around the streets. They're just being more robust with that. And the more robust that they are with getting their point in time counts, the more robust the programming can be, and it's going to help shape all kinds of different things within the city. There is a projection that encampments will have doubled in size over the last 2 years. So, affordability crisis is a word that we hear all the time, but it has a significant impact. Lots of people are living paycheck to paycheck. And when costs continue to increase, it's really hard to make ends meet. And then how do you continue to maintain your home? In some of the rural communities within Saskatchewan, there's an estimation that about 2 in every 100 people is experiencing homelessness. And a lot of these folks are hidden or invisible, which means that they might be couch surfing or they might be tenting in a park of some kind, not necessarily an encampment, but they might be, in a campground, but they have no fixed address. And so that was a little bit of a shock to read that 2 in every 100 people has no fixed address in some of the rural areas in Saskatchewan. Right now in the city of Saskatoon, they are really experiencing a drug crisis. And at the time of this recording, there was 30 ODs that happened in 3 days. That's gone down significantly to where they were at the beginning of April. So there is a real drug crisis happening at the moment in Saskatoon. So we have housing, and so we took over an existing project. And we took that project over on December 1st of 2024. And most recently, April of 2025, we opened a shelter in Saskatoon. And we also have community engagement and volunteer engagement in Saskatoon. So within our housing itself, the services that we provide are only for the folks that are living in that space. We don't have any services that we provide to people who may walk in. What we have is for our residents only. We do a lot of programming in housing and in our space. And that programming is everything from social programming to maybe like medical programming. It's really important. You and I were created to be in community. The people that are in our housing, they're created to be in community. We're all created to be in community. So how do we build and foster healthy community for them? So that's where a lot of our social programs come in. They love karaoke. They love bingo. Sometimes it's arts and crafts. Art itself is actually very therapeutic for a lot of folks. So we really like art. It could be, we do special events around some of the holidays that we have, just making sure that they have that celebration as well. So those are the social elements. Then we really focus on life skills. What does it mean to maintain tenancy? The basic skills of learning how to keep your suite clean. It includes things like how to do your laundry. It might include, how do I cook with the groceries that I get in my food hamper. In Saskatoon, we provide all the meals. They are provided for them. Not all of our housing locations have that. Sometimes it's, what does it mean to be a good neighbor? What does it mean when I'm living in close quarters with somebody? How do I foster healthy relationships? How do I keep my bathroom clean? How do I ensure I pay my rent? And if somebody falls behind, we work with them to come up with payment plans. So that's part of programming. Another part of programming might be looking at partnerships. We do a lot of our programming through partnerships, which could be everything from mental health supports on site to, say, an anger management class, or it could be financial literacy. What does that look like? We also have a lot of faith-based programming as well, so Bible studies that folks can engage with. And then we might even have medical supports on site. So in Saskatoon, we're really privileged to have a community health nurse on site that works with our residents there. And this is all done through partnership with Saskatoon Health Authority. We also have a nurse practitioner on site, and we have a doctor that comes on site. So having that group on site, they help with ensuring people are taking their medications, to navigating the medical system, to wound care, just different things that are helping our folks advance and remain healthy. So that's a big bonus that we have at that particular location.
You've been listening to Homegrown, a podcast from the Mustard Seed. I'm Drew. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. What we've heard today reminds us that homelessness doesn't always look the way that we expect it to. In rural areas, it often hides behind closed doors, quiet streets, and unspoken struggles. But hidden doesn't mean harmless, and it certainly doesn't mean hopeless. The people we've met, the stories they've shared, and the data we've explored all point to the same truth. Rural homelessness is real, and it deserves to be uncovered, understood, and acted on. This episode was just one chapter of a larger story. Subscribe now to join us for the next episode, where a new voice from the Mustard Seed will guide you through what life is like living in the shelter. To learn more or to get involved, please visit theseed.ca. And until next time, remember, hope isn't just an idea, it's something we grow together.